This life is not an easy one, and I, for one, definitely speak from experience. My name is Peter Benjamin Parker, and ever since my uncle was gunned down by a criminal in New York City, I decided to use these powers not just for the fun, not for my self pleasure, but for the responsibility of everybody else who needs it more in this city than I do. I fought my college teacher, Dr. Curtis Connors, who became a giant lizard. I cured the city of any other giant lizards, and everybody's back to normal. But now I have to embrace this identity. I'm now confident in my powers as Spider Man, and I embrace my new role as a hero. And spend time with the beautiful Gwen Stacy, played by the incomparable Emma Stone, in between protecting New York City from criminals. However, my greatest battle has yet to begin, and with the emergence of a new criminal named Electro, formerly known as Mac Dillon, who I actually saved on the road one time. So I have a bit of a connection there. I must confront an enemy far more powerful than I am. And then my old friend Harry Osborn returns with the same goblin disease that killed his father, Norman, who was the CEO over Oscorp. And this causes the death of his father. I must come to realize that all of my enemies have one thing in common. The very organization that I work for myself, Oscorp. What it do, YouTubers and Instagrammers and all you vloggers and Discorders out there? Whew, so much numbers, so many numbers, so many. It's like trying to memorize binary codes, all that. But if you are new to this channel, if you are new to this video, don't forget to follow, like, share, subscribe, and comment. But whatever you have to comment, you have to say something good, but you keep whatever bad thing you have to say to yourself, because this movie is already underrated enough. But that's okay. I, Spider-Man, have a few criticisms to say about one of my most underrated adventures as well. But that doesn't mean this was a great experience to watch. But again, before I continue, if you're on YouTube, I already covered those who are on Instagram over there. But if you are on YouTube over here, don't forget to like and subscribe and click that bell to keep up with everything, so you can keep up with everything going on the web. The web. See, for me personally, the web is a job and a hobby. Now, the story of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is heavily criticized for the same reasons that the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 3 is hated and underrated. An overabundance of villains and a disgraceful attempt to build a cinematic universe. Now I can understand, because there's my home, Marvel Studios at the time, was already successful in building an amazing cinematic universe, and was at least in the middle of their storytelling of the Infinity Saga. Meanwhile, Sony's trying their best effort in trying to come up with my own franchise outside of where I truly belong, outside of a homecoming. This indeed is a huge flaw, but it does not stop this movie from being just a great Spider-Man popcorn flick. The story of The Amazing Spider-Man 1 goes as follows, though. Peter is now embracing his superhero persona. Spider-Man, Gwen Stacy, keeps getting psyched out by Peter, and it throws their relationship into a frenzy. Harry Osborn, my old friend, is diagnosed with the same Goblin disease. I call it the Goblin disease because his father, Norman Osborn, is the Green Goblin, which I've never fought in this universe, but my Raimi variant, has fought a Goblin played by Willem Dafoe, that I'm sure we're all going to fight this Christmas. But Electro wants to swear revenge on the very person he is crazy about. That's me, y'all. That's me. But in a mysterious figure named Dr. Fierce, or Mr. Fierce, Mr. Fierce with no shadow, with a shadow for a face. So I'm guessing that's why they call him Fierce, because his face is so fierce they can't even put it in the light. Is putting together a group of six sinister villains, combined with the live-action Spidey foes that we have seen in the past and in the MCU already. Now, looking at the overall story of the sequel, it sounds like a hot mess on paper. But the irony is that the pleasing experience of its predecessor is enough to distract you from its crappy and unorganized plot. The story might be lowbrow, but the theater experience for this movie was fun, to say the least. The things that make the sequel different and feel better is that from the first one, the little things like Spider-Man fighting crime, mostly during the day, his swinging here is presented more fluidly than any other Spider-Man movie. The status of Peter's relationship with Gwen Stacy, the visual effects, the soundtrack, and of course, the story structure. I am not trying to fully bash this movie for what it is, but while the movie has its emotional moments and awesome Spider-Man sequences, it feels very unbalanced all the way through, both in quality and context. That's a lot to say the least. Now, since I told you the main characters that this unsophisticated plot revolves around, it's time to break them down. Andrew Garfield's take on me, Peter Benjamin Parker, aka Spider-Man, is given a character arc in the first film who goes from ordinary carefree teenager who uses his powers for fun to an amazing superhero who uses his powers to the obligations of other people. This transformation is still felt here, at least in the beginning of the film. He is having a ball as Spider-Man. I'm glad he is having a ball in playing me. He's having a ball playing me, and he is still aware of how much his actions will have consequences and how he must be responsible in the midst of it all. Peter's mettle for responsibility and obligations get tested when he enters back into Harry Osborn's life. Well, actually, Harry Osborn entered back into my life. I came to visit him, but then he decided to respond back. Therefore, he came back into my life. So it's a win-win, really. And he gets himself all caught up in the web of love with Gwen Stacy. Well, Andrew Garfield's take on Spider-Man gets caught up in the web of love with Gwen. Whenever he is not getting tested, he is still trying to discover the truth, discover more of the truths about his father's Oscorp research. It is not that they shouldn't have continued that subplot for this movie, but they already have Peter in so many stressful arenas, and it threw off the focus of the character. This goes back to closing conversation between Peter and Captain Stacy in the first movie, and that was to keep Gwen out of harm's way by maintaining his distance, keeping his distance. See, in the comics, I remember Captain Stacy told me to protect Gwen from whatever comes her way, but here they decided to tell me to stay away from her. What? They can't do that. I love her. But anyway. However, his love for Gwen Stacy was so much bigger than the wishes of her father, and seeing after everything she has done for him in the first movie and being the kinetic force behind their bond and loving on him, it was time for him to repay him back. It was time for him to repay her back. This is when I started to see the issue. It is a plot point that happens to work, but it shouldn't have. First of all, it is another instance of how mischaracterized Andrew playing me is. Because even if he loved Mary Jane Watson, I remember a variant of mine named Tobey Maguire. He loved Andrew Garfield. Not he loved Andrew Garfield. No, take that back. He loved Mary Jane Watson so much, but he was still willing to sacrifice her love for her to keep her safe. That's what I'm talking about. It's still love, even if you don't want to be around her. It's still love. But Andrew here doesn't do that. He should love her enough to let her be safe, therefore out of the radar of his supervillains. And that brings me to, and this is why the choices for the lover to stay worked in Spider-Man 2 was that, bro. Excuse me for a second, y'all. This is why the choice for the lover to stay worked in Spider-Man 2, works in Spider-Man 2, and not here. But about Harry Osborn, we get a subplot lead up that we all saw coming. I'm not the only person that saw this coming. Like when I saw my movie and the way they use Harry with the Goblin syndrome, I saw it coming. But if we knew that Norman Osborn dies as the Green Goblin, because he had goblin hands at his deathbed, where else would that take Harry down to? He says he is dying. He demands that Spider-Man gives him his blood, and his necessity for a cure would take him to the only place we can associate the Osborn name with. Enter Maxwell Dillon, the electrical engineer who becomes Electro after a freak accident that combines the electricity of a high voltage wire, power cord to say the least, with that of an electric eel from the sea. The writing of his character is cliche with the whole nobody to somebody transformation that has been seen before and would be seen again. But Jamie Foxx's Electro, which I know I cannot wait to have a rematch with back in No Way Home when I fight alongside the younger Tom and the older Toby, is visually breathtaking, with Sandman being in second place. Sorry, Sandman, but Electro looks much more handsome on screen. And the most powerful Spider-Man villain ever to be put on the silver screen. So I see 51% of all Rotten Tomatoes critics recommend The Amazing Spider-Man 2, making it rotten, saying they don't recommend The Amazing Spider-Man 2. But here's what I got to say. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 ain't no legendary sequel like Spider-Man 2 from 2004, and its story structure does not come close to its predecessor. But the action is more enjoyable, and the chemistry of Garfield's Parker and Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy is always amazing. It is enough for us to pardon Sony with their plot's identity crisis. I think it deserves 7.8 Essos out of 10. But that is my review, guys. Spider-Man's review on The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Y'all can let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And I'll see you guys next time. And just to remind you, I'm the one who stopped Electro. Don't you ever forget who's amazing. What happened to the lights? Is this a power outage? Max, is that you? Holy sh!